Hey everybody, Jeff Reinhart here, LMP and Lancaster Online. Welcome into Week 8 of the LL Football Roundtable, sponsored by Auto House in Lancaster. Here we are in Quarryville, home of the Solanco Golden Mules. Who leads the LL League in total offense? Solanco. Who leads the league in rushing? Solanco. You know why? They got a great O-line. Let's talk to one of them, Tyler Kreider. How are you, Tyler?
Good, how are you?
Good, bud. Here we are in Quarryville. Okay. I want to talk about your O-line because you guys lead the league in rushing, you lead the league in offense, and you don't do any of that without the O-line guys. How much pride do you take in the job you're doing this year?
We're pretty proud of it. We practice hard, and we like to say we like to be physical up front, and that's how what wins games. We have 3 workouts every week in the summer, and then we try and stay in the weight room during the season too. So that just helps us a lot in the line and stuff.
What motivates you to do that? Because that's a lot of grunt work, and it's hard work. Do you have a guy who pushes you? Do you have something that just gets you through those workouts every day, especially in the summertime when it's 110 down here?
Yeah. Well, Coach Cox mainly, he pushes us to get there because we know that it'll make us better on the field, and it just helps us out a lot.
Our line is great. I think I have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and that's what helps me be so successful. Usually they're really big holes that I'm able to just run through full speed. Other times I am going to have to be a little smart with it, but most of the time they're really big holes. If they're big holes, I'm just going to lower my shoulder and pray for the best, but if not, I'm going to use my speed. But most of the time they're really big holes, and I'm really grateful for that.
What kind of game are you looking forward to Friday? What do you know about Calico, how they might attack you, etc., and anxious to get a shot at them?
What I'm looking forward to is the physicality of the game. Calico is a great a group of people. They're coached very well, and I'm excited for how physical the game's going to be. One thing we do know is that they're going to try and stop the option game really well, and we're going to attack on that. We're still going to gash them. We're still going to pound the ball. And we're just looking forward to the physicality of the game.
Talk about the importance of finishing strong in hopes that you get a Week 11 and get to go to the playoffs. How important will that be to your group?
Well, it would be really important because last time we made it was 2 years ago, so if we could make it there, it would be really awesome for the whole team, and I think the coaches would like that too.
Welcome back from Solanco. Thanks to those folks in the wilds of Quarryville for hanging out with the Rhines for a bit. And we are back in the studio for the latest edition of the LL Football Roundtable, brought to you as always by Auto House of Lancaster. I'm Mike Gross, and I'll be hosting. Jason Guarente to my left will be contributing insight, as will Jeffrey Reinhart. These guys cover high school football for LNP. LancasterOnline.com, and we are at the point of the year where the season-defining games are coming, and thankfully, happily, we have one of them coming up on Friday.
Oh, yes.
In what, Morgantown?
Elverson,
okay.
Top of the hill in Elverson.
I'm talking about Twin Valley and Wyomissing, both of whom are contenders for section and district. And maybe beyond.
State.
Yes.
Maybe state.
Jeffrey,
yes.
go.
Twin Valley is number 1 in the state in 4A.
Although not number 1 in the power rankings.
Which is a little odd, but it speaks to non-league.
Because of Lamprey Stratton.
LS is number 1 in the district. Twin Valley's undefeated, scorching. They're giving up 104 yards a game. That's pretty good.
Point differential 342 to 40.
It's not
That's
bad.
good.
That's really good.
It's just in.
Number one in D. I think they're number 2 in offense. They've given up the fewest points. They've scored the most points. They've only given up 290 rushing yards, and YO runs the ball. YO is also right up there in all of these stats. They're number 2 in defense. And they've just kind of been humming along here. They had that early loss to Haverford School, and they've really been picking people off left and right here. So setting up this Titanic game here for first place. LS is tied with those two, and LS has Twin Valley next week. Wow.
Jason, matchup here. What do you think?
My thoughts, I was going through MikeDragosports.com to look at the history here, because people who follow the LL may not know Twin Valley's history, which is not good.
Not great.
94 and 187 all time.
Yikes. I can remember when they didn't have football. It's
1996 was their first season. 4 winning seasons. Oof. So you don't really think of that as the number 1 ranked team in the state. It shows you how far they've progressed.
Yep.
And then you have Wyomissing, which is always in this situation, which is great every year. 12 district championships. Twin Valley has never won a district title. So to me, that's what's interesting is you have the perennial power and the rising power, and Twin Valley is now at the level where they could be favored over a team like Wyomissing.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they probably would be. They probably are a slight favorite in this game.
I picked Twin Valley to win the section back in August, and I'll stick with that pick for this week. Evan Myers, the quarterback, 5,000-yard passer. He'll probably hit 2,000 rushing yards in this game.
Yeah,
which
also
is great.
10 yards a carry.
Amazing. Evan Johnson, they're really good tailback kid.
And he's also 10 yards a carry. And they each have
Yes.
11 touchdowns. They have very
Yes.
similar numbers. I just noticed that.
He went
today.
over 3,000 career yards, and they've done this on all these numbers without Drew Engel, who last year was a sophomore, rushed for 1,600 yards.
that?
And he's missed pretty much the whole season here. So, Johnson and Myers have been unbelievable. They got a great line. That's where they've kind of won, the
It's
trench
not
battle.
just that Myers' dad has done a great job building this.
Yeah.
They have elite athletes now,
They
right?
do. Their receivers are track sprinter kids.
Yeah.
They have hosses up front. The Myers kid is a 4-year starter behind center, and he's just a football player. What a great matchup. That's an awesome game.
Yeah, it seems like we've been biding our time for a while
Little bit.
now, and this is the kind that we look forward to.
Yipper.
All right, on the other side of it, we have a game, kind of a unique situation last week, and it also involved Twin Valley, where Donnel ended up forfeiting at halftime, which we have not seen. I don't know if I've ever seen that. Anyway, Jason, you wrote an excellent piece about this situation from the kind of the Donnel standpoint. What do you got?
Well, the reason I wrote the story is to give the Donnel players a voice. We have all these people who are criticizing them. They're calling them quitters. They're calling them an embarrassment. And some of these people are in the media. And there's a lot of sports media and there's not a lot of sports journalism. So I wanted to talk to the actual people involved and get their opinion and say, this is what they think of their situation. And they get to tell you what it's been like to go through this. They didn't come out for the second half of a 49-0 loss. Section 4 is a tough situation right now. We just talked about how great the Twin Valley Wyomissing game is, and it is great. It's as good as you can get in our district. But the flip side is we have the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. And the gap between those two teams is enormous. And we're putting teams on the field with Twin Valley, Wyomissing, and Lampeter-Strasburg who probably shouldn't be playing them. So Donnel had 3 games in the span of 4 weeks against those 3 opponents and got so beat up that they couldn't put a representative roster on the field for the second half against Twin Valley. Now that's a failure. It's not anybody's fault. It's not preventable, but we can acknowledge the situation and we can point out that this is how they ended up in a circumstance where they couldn't finish the game, and that maybe it's not their fault, and that maybe we didn't quite set things up perfectly for them. And that's all the piece was designed to point out to people and to let them know that Donnel was put in a tough spot.
Well, I have a couple of questions, but first I just want to point out the haves and the have-nots. There is a big gap in this sport. There usually is, and in this sport uniquely among sports, that gap could mean health considerations, safety considerations. Yes. That's a little different than the other high school sports.
Sure, yeah. And so does Santi, their coach, messaged me maybe Friday night on their way back or when he got back late Friday, and he said, please be careful what gets written about this because there's 2 sides to the story. And, we need to tell our side of the story, which
they had enough injuries that they really had like 18 or 19 kids, some of whom were literally JVs, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing is you can't go through their roster and count the players and say they have 40 players. There's a lot of kids who do not belong on a field with a team like Twin Valley. I mean,
or they're not linemen, so
or they're quarterbacks playing linebacker or whatever the situation.
Just to piggyback off what you said earlier, I had a Section 4 coach tell me very recently that not all the teams in Section 4 should be lining up in Section 4 and having to play against those kind of a teams because it's not.
I don't know what you.
But there's really nothing. That's your schedule. That's your class. That's how many kids you have in your building. But it is a have-not situation right
Everything
now.
that's great about Section 5, where we have these fabulous matchups because we have all these teams on equal footing.
Yeah.
The opposite is true in Section 4, and the only reason for that is that LS, YO, and Twin Valley have separated themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more a
that's right.
compliment to how great they've become.
So what do you hear? Are you hearing anything from readers about what you wrote?
Not really. I mean, most of the complaints were about how it was behind a paywall and they had to pay to read the story, which is pretty typical.
That's a whole other
That's a whole
show.
other can of worms.
we
But
can't work for free here.
a couple people were happy with it. A couple people said if they want to play so bad, why couldn't they come out in the second half? And it's like, well, if you're hurt, you can't play. You know, I mean, we're talking about real life consequences.
Yeah, if you didn't want to go out and play a mercy rule JV-ish kind of a game for 2 quarters with a running clock, then they were really banged up.
Yeah.
And it was smart because you're looking ahead. They still got 3
Probably
weeks
some of
away.
them did want to. Probably some
some
of
of
the
them
kids.
did,
Yeah, some of the kids did.
sure.
Want to.
We also had 2 games on Thursday night that were 49-0 at halftime. And that's not good for the winning team or the losing team.
that's right.
And maybe there's a way to, I know they're trying, but to keep those scores down as best you can.
Okay, now,
Yes.
as we said, we went to Solanco. Solanco has maybe the number 2 game on the docket this week.
Yeah, locally for the Lancaster County crowd,
Yeah.
Solanco at Cocalico on Friday is a fun game. Solanco's got in some shootouts that they didn't win. Eastern New York was 57-50. They've had some crazy back and forth games. Here's what I like about Solanco. Number 1 rushing in the league, 2,300 yards. Number 1 offense in the league, more than Twin Valley. There's one team in the LL that averages 400 yards a game, and it's Solanco, 406. So they're tricky to stop. Now they get Cocalico, which found it. We've talked about them a lot. They've won 4 in a row. They're tied for first with Weiser.
And maybe found it more on the defensive side.
Correct.
Yeah.
Shut out Garden Spot, held Ephrata to 7 last week. So Cocalico's been good, and they're tied for first with Weiser in Section 3, and they play them next week. So they can't get caught looking ahead, and they got to slow down a Solanco team that can run the heck out of the ball.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
That's a fun matchup.
You're
That game,
selling me on this, Ryan.
Yeah, that
You're
game
selling
might-
me on this matchup. Nice
It might
job.
take an hour. I mean, they're going to run.
Here's my stat. 25 combined completions,
Between
4,000 rushing yards. So
Nice.
you might be able to make plans for about 8:45.
I hope so. I think Coach Cox at Solanco on the way out when Tyler and I were down there said, might get out of there pretty quick for you on Friday.
We
So
like to root for that. We like to root for that ground game from a deadline perspective.
that's a fun game. There's a lot of games this week where teams need to win to get to next week's showdown.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Jason Guarente.
We talked a little bit about Cocalico's defense. They've won 2 games by a field goal.
Yeah.
Talon Popoulos kicked those field goals, one of the best soccer players in the LL League, all-state candidate. Football teams need kickers, and they're often soccer players, and it makes a big difference.
Yep. Cocalico always seems to
Penn
find
State could use him.
Yeah, really. Cocalico always seems to find a soccer guy.
Yeah, they have several.
Yeah, and he's been really good. Got to mention Schuylkill Valley at Hamburg. It's a trophy game. Your favorite. It's the Frost Bowl. 24-24-1 all time in that series. So it's tied, as mentioned, Hamburg.
How grateful is the local trophy making industry for Lancaster Lebanon League football?
They're keeping them busy.
Man.
Hamburg fell out of first last week to Pequay Valley. That one stung. Schuylkill Valley's been really good. Logan Narwaki should go over.
Yeah, they're playing better, huh?
He should go over 4,000 passing yards this week. Schuylkill Valley has Lancaster Catholic in week 10, so they can't get caught looking ahead here. They're alone in first, trying to close it out here in the next couple of weeks.
It's been pretty cool.
It has. Trivia question: what is Wilson's all-time record against Penn Manor in varsity tackle football?
I know it's a 0 at one end of it. I don't know
is.
what it is on the other end.
32-0.
32
Bulldogs comments on
I would
Friday.
guess they played more than that.
Back to 1975.
Yeah.
Penn Manor's kind of bounced around a little bit.
Yeah, I
They were
know,
in
but
Section
still,
2. And Cedars trying to avoid 40 losses in a
We
row.
put up a fight last week.
They did. They took E-Town into the fourth quarter, 14-8. But
14-8.
they're trying to avoid 40. I think we were all kind of hoping it didn't get to that number. But
and that might have been
Mifflin's
their best
really-
shot at least in this year.
Mifflin's really good. So keep plugging Cedars.
All right, gang, that is it. We've reached the end of this edition of the LL Football Roundtable. For Jason and Jeff and Mike, we'll see you again next week.